Hello, folks, and welcome to the second week of conference play. And wow, did we have a game yesterday? You know, I was obsessed with the premise of this game going in. I mean, Michigan and Wisconsin playing each other for the first time in over a decade. Both teams in the top 10, both teams coming off blowout wins, both teams defensive juggernauts, potential playoff implications. I mean, it was going down for real. And this game had it all. Well, okay, it didn't have field goals, so it didn't have it all, but nonetheless, had playmakers on offense, playmakers on defense, good offensive plays, good defensive plays, came right down to the wire. Classic old school Big Ten football. I mean, you gotta love sports. Unless, of course, you are a Georgia fan, or a Rutgers fan, or a Louisville fan, or a Michigan State fan. Then you probably hate it. But an absolutely just phenomenal game yesterday. Now, I know a lot of people were acting, disappointed that it wasn't a blowout like the last few games, the first game this season where Michigan hasn't scored at least 40 points. To which I say this. All of last week, I heard people saying that Michigan was going to run roughshod on Wisconsin, that they were just going to run them right off the field. I wasn't buying that for 1 minute. Heck, I even thought the line, which shifted to Michigan by 11 just before kickoff, I thought that was too much too, because I felt it ignored what Wisconsin had done so far this year. It ignored the fact that Wisconsin has an incredibly stout defense, that they already had knocked off two teams in the top 10 in Michigan State and LSU. And yeah, you can make the argument that, both of those teams probably didn't deserve to be in the top 10, particularly LSU, but they did nonetheless defeat them. And honestly, I just felt it wasn't respecting Wisconsin and what they'd done, because Wisconsin is definitely a team that belongs in the top 10. I mean, they proved that last week. They proved it again this week. At the end of the day, though, I still felt comfortable that Michigan would pull this out, because when it came down to it, I mean, you can make an argument for why both teams could have won this game, and this game could have easily gone to Wisconsin instead of to Michigan. I just trusted Michigan's offense a little bit more than Wisconsin's. And turned out I was right, but not necessarily for the reasons I was expecting. But yes, this was every bit the defensive chess game that I expected it to be. Neither teams really had a lot of luck passing the ball, though surprisingly enough, both teams did get kind of a run game going. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was nonetheless effective. But yeah, just an absolute classic Big Ten football game. And before I go any further, I do want to give Wisconsin the proper credit they deserve, because this is definitely a team that can bring some respectability to the Big Ten West. I mean, they've got playmakers on defense. I mean, of course, led by one T.J. Watt. Yes, that T.J. Watt. He is becoming every bit as good as his brother, and I think he's got a really, really bright future ahead of him. The offense for Wisconsin, it's not bad. It's not offensive, but obviously it was outclassed Michigan's defense today. But Alex Hornibrook, I think that he did, I'm not going to go so far as to do an admirable job, because ultimately his QBR was 7.6. I mean, that's not great, but he is still a freshman. This is still his second start. I think he's definitely got the skills to become a quality quarterback for Wisconsin. So I do not think his performance in this game should be considered an indictment of him, because it was more of a testament to how just incredibly stout Michigan's defense is. All right, so with that in mind, let's get down to breaking down the offense for Michigan. Spates, once again, kind of, at this point, Wilton Spate is now where Jake Rudock was in the middle of last season. So that's something to keep an eye on. Today, Spate went 20 of 32 for 219 yards, averaged 6.6 yards per attempt, one touchdown, one pick, his first pick since the opening game, and Didn't help that the color commentary guys for ABC kept mentioning that fact, which is, okay, let's go ahead and jinx him. Why the fuck not? And he's finished the QBR rating of 26.8. A lot of people were talking about last week about Spade having some accuracy issues. Again, he may or may not be playing with a slightly dinged up shoulder. After the hit against Colorado, we don't know for sure. I felt Spade looked pretty accurate today. My only real concern is that he was throwing into a lot of tight coverage situations, which did lead to the one pick and almost get a couple other passes picked off as well. But I don't know if that's bad decision making on his part or just because of Wisconsin's defense. Also, a couple of his passes were dropped uncharacteristically by Darboh and Chesson, I believe. Chesson, by the way, took another shot today, but he seems to be okay. So that's good news there. So, and Wilton Speight did have the game-winning score by lofting a 46-yard bomb to Amara Darboh, which was reminiscent of the pass that Rudolph attempted to Darboh against Michigan State last year. This time, though, Darboh caught it. So, like I said, Wilton Speight's already at, if not past, where Jake Rudock was by middle of the season last year. So it's definitely a good sign. And Harbaugh defended Wilton Speight in the press conference, and a lot of the criticism lobbed his way. I think it's pretty clear that Jim Harbaugh, he has his man, he's sticking with him. And for people that are still on the fence about Wilton Speight, let's just keep in mind who's the coach here. We saw what he did to Jake Rudock last year, and it's clear to me what he's doing to Wilton Speight now. I mean, either you get it or you don't. Now, as far as the rushing game goes, again, both teams did actually find a little bit of a running game, which is kind of surprising considering that both these teams have stout rush defenses. Though Michigan had a bit more success in that department. I'm going to just pull up the yardage here for rushing. Yeah, Michigan ran 130 yards on the ground as opposed to Wisconsin's 71. In a related story, Michigan passed for 349 yards on the ground as opposed to Wisconsin's 159. Only had 14 points to show for it because, well, most of those yardage points came back. If there's no reason for how defensively minded this game was, the average starting field position for these teams was like the 30-yard line. There were a lot of drives that either went 3 and out or were very, very short. Now, Michigan did control time of possession, 35-41, 24-19, but that's not exactly hogging the ball game. And the one time Wisconsin did actually get into Michigan territory and ultimately scored was after the Wilton Speight interception was turned 46 yards. So, again, that just goes to show you that if it wasn't for that one pick, Wisconsin very well could have been shut out. But rushing today, Davion Smith, 17 carries, 66 yards, 3.9 yards per carry. Ty Isaac, 6 yards a carry for 48 yards. He's really turning into a proper fullback, Ty Isaac. Chris Evans saw some action again today, had one big run as well. Chris Evans, I think, still's got a lot of talent, but he is still raw, still needs to work on those mistakes and finding his holes and so on, but he's definitely got a bright future ahead of him. Speaking of which, saw a couple of interesting things in offense now. A couple of those wrinkles that Harbaugh is going to throw in this offense. One of them came on the last play to end the first quarter, and you've probably already seen it by now. The entire offensive core lines up in an I formation, like literally a single line behind the center before splitting off into the power run formation. And it actually worked. It got the ball down to the 1 yard line, first and goal. I've heard a lot of people come up with names for this. I've heard the Michigan Centipede, the Michigan Train, the Harbaugh Train. My personal suggestions are either the Michigan Hype Train or the Harbaugh Power Eye. So, but yeah, that was just a classic Jim Harbaugh offensive formation right there. And the other thing we saw, I believe was toward the end of the second quarter, Jabril Peppers came in for about 4 or 5 offensive snaps, and all of them were in the Wildcat. Actually, take that back. I think a couple of them he was like a running back, but he did most of the snaps actually in the Wildcat. But the thing is, he didn't run the ball. He handed the ball off to Davion Smith. So my guess is that he was inserted there as a decoy. It is a shame that he didn't run because I really wanted to see Jabril Peppers go up against TJ Watt as far as his rushing attack goes. But the Wildcat play action handoff. So that's a nice little wrinkle. I don't think that's the last we've seen of either of those formations. I don't know when Harbaugh would employ the Michigan hype train again, but I can definitely see the Wildcat play action being used down the road. Okay, so now let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Whew. Wow. Like I said, this defense today was just a really defensively minded game. And both of these defenses are incredibly stout, but ultimately Michigan's outclassed Wisconsin. So I'm trying to get the stats here. Michigan ultimately had 2 sacks on Hornibrook. Now, Wisconsin did get 4 sacks to Wilton Speight, but that's for a couple of reasons. One of them is that I think a couple of them came from T.J. Watt. I mean, you're not going to stop T.J. Watt. And the other one is that one of the sore spots of the game is that tackle Grant Newsome went down, took a shot to the knee. Don't know the nature of the injury. It's possible he could require surgery, which would put him out for the year, which is really, really too bad, as he was doing quite well at that spot. Jawan Bushell-Beatty had to come in for him. That's definitely one way to get thrown into the fire right there. But, yeah, it was unfortunately very reminiscent of Jeremy Clark's injury last week. But he was able to walk out the field off his own power. So, hoping for the best there for Grant Newsome. But, yeah. Rashawn Gary surprisingly didn't see as many snaps in this game. At least he didn't appear he did to me. I'll have to look at the breakdown that MGO blog does later this week. Not quite sure why he wasn't in as much. I mean, he did get in there. He certainly did get in there. But it wasn't as often as I might have liked. And I know Don Brown likes to rotate his defensive line in and out. Not quite sure why Rashawn didn't see as much action as he would have otherwise. But ultimately, it didn't matter too much because this Michigan defense was incredibly stout. 3 interceptions as well as Hornibrook because, like I said, Alex Hornibrook has got the talent, but he is still a freshman quarterback. And that became very apparent as the day went on. As Michigan started putting more pressure on him, he started making these freshman mistakes, started hurrying his throws, managed to get a couple of good throws off in very tight situations, so that's pretty good on him, but still made quite a few freshman mistakes. The 3 picks that he made, 2 of them, I think the 2 of them by Channing Stribling, were basically just thrown to him. I mean, one of them, Stribling had a great coverage on receiver. The other one, Stribling made a play for the ball. And then Jordan Lewis's interception to seal the game. Wow. I'll just go say, that's Charles Woodson-esque right there. That was a Charles Woodson type of interception. And Woodson himself praised it after the game. So, that is going to be one of the all-time memorable moments in Michigan Stadium right there. That interception. That was just... And I know people are complaining, we should have dropped the ball because Michigan could have had another one. It's like, I said, come on. The game was over at that point. I mean, what does it matter if you punch in for one more score or not? I mean, would I trade a score for an interception like that? Absolutely. Any day of the week. All right, so special teams. It was kind of an adventure in this game. 3 field goal attempts. All of them missed. 2 by Kenny Allen, 1 by the second-string kicker. I think his name is Ryan Tice. Kenny Allen appears to have legitimate trouble now with field kicking. This is not consistent with Kenny Allen as that we saw last year. This is not something he customarily does. And again, my personal, uninformed, completely non-expert opinion is that because he's pulling triple duty, kickoffs, punts, and field goals, his leg is tired out. And when it comes to kickoffs and punts, he does fine. I mean, he managed to boom the balls down around the 20 or 30 yard line on regularity. I mean, I don't think he really had a bad punt in this game. He just can't get the field goals anymore. Maybe because he's focusing so much on the punts, he can no longer have his technique to properly net the field goals. I don't know. That's just my thing. But Harbaugh has said they will have a kicking competition this week to try and iron out those issues because of course, we have kicking competition. Why the hell not? But and by the way, for those wondering why we haven't put Quinn Norton in, apparently he is injured. That's why he's not seeing action. I have no doubt that if he was healthy, he would probably be in the game by now. But yeah, definitely I get those field goal issues worked out because you can't just leave 9 points on the board like that. You can't do it. Fortunately, we now have a couple weeks to work out these issues because Michigan now has a chance to kind of coast for the next couple of weeks. Well, I don't say coast per se, but they're going to go up against opposition that's not exactly the best of the Big Ten. This week we have Rutgers. I think that's all we need to say about that. And then next week we have Illinois, which is not off to the most auspicious start. It'll be an interesting game. That'll be the battle of former NFL coaches and, of course, Jim Harbaugh and Lovie Smith. I mean, Illinois, I don't think they're completely terrible, but I don't really see this being much of a game per se. And then somewhere in there, Michigan has a bye week. And after that, we go to East Lansing. And I'll tell you what. If last week I started feeling pretty good about Michigan's chances to beat Michigan State, I'm feeling really, really good about it this week. Because, I mean, look, I'm not going to obsess over this because, again, I'm not going to. I said I wouldn't pass judgment until the day of the game. I'm not going to do that. But how do you let Indiana take you to overtime? And granted, I think that happened when we played them last year. I mean, I'm sure it did. I'm sure we went to overtime or whatever it is. Or it might have been the end of the fourth quarter. I mean, Indiana played us late in the game. But that was because that game was an offensive explosion. Indiana is the chaos team. And it wasn't so much that Indiana could stop us on defense. It was that our defense couldn't stop them because they didn't have a guy named Jordan Howard. Remember him? He's that kind of a running back. But just, how do you let Indiana make those stops on you? I mean, they don't play defense. They just don't. And granted, you held on only 24 points, so I don't know. Maybe that says something. But, I mean, my goodness. 0-2 in conference play already? I mean, Sparty, come on, get it together here, guys. But yeah, we have to beat them now. I mean, because there's absolutely no way Sparty's going to be a top 10 team when we go to East Lansing. So, yeah, we got to beat them as a matter of principle. I mean, granted, we always do, but now I think we really have to just stomp on them. And I will confess to you all, I want to stomp on Michigan State so bad that Mark Antonio takes the LSU job the very next day. Yeah, that's, oh yeah, I'm obsessed with that game. I can't wait for it, but that's still a few weeks off in the future. Let's handle those idiots from New Jersey first, as well as Lovie Smith's boys. Okay, so that is this week's video. Thank you again for watching. And as always, go blue.